We are currently translating a series of fluid, ancient esoteric frameworks through a highly rigid, modern linguistic filter. The raw input variables consist of the inherently animistic and polycentric cosmologies of the Dogon, the Bakongo, the Yoruba, and the Kemetic traditions, alongside Hermetic Kabbalism and Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Every element of this integrated system must be expressed using exclusively Presbyterian terminology. These systems exhibit an ontological mismatch. The esoteric traditions are high-dimensional, treating the universe as a fluid organism, while Calvinist monergism is deterministic and mechanically rigid. Solving this requires a shift from comparative theology to rigorous semantic constraint mapping. To map these systems, inward pressure dictates state changes and movement within the void. This absolute pressure maps to the Presbyterian doctrine of absolute sovereignty. Here, Genesis 1:1 is the initial pressure differential applied to a static void. Standard allegorical interpretations rely on personification to explain creation. This mechanistic approach relies on thermodynamic state changes. Enforcing a strict physical variable strips away historical allegory, leaving a purely deterministic system driven by unavoidable laws. We now shift our focus to analyze the fundamental forces within this closed thermodynamic system through strict masculine and feminine polarities. This vector field maps the masculine polarity, the active, outward kinetic pressure wave. The feminine polarity is the potential vector, providing the structural resistance to contain that energy. When prime pressure applies, these vectors interact. The tension generates measurable force. This outward kinetic expansion corresponds to the metaphor of the word, the command initiating systemic action. The structural resistance corresponds to the waters, the friction allowing the void to take shape. The 6 days of Genesis denote the sequential phases required to reach thermodynamic equilibrium. Polarity functions as the mechanical binary of expansion and resistance required for any state change. We can test the esoteric cosmologies by filtering them through this pressure and polarity model. This node-based map of Hermetic Kabbalism shows kinetic pressure descending from Kether. Each emanation requires structural diffusion to maintain stability towards Malkuth. Dogon cosmology yields the same structure. The Namo functions as the kinetic wave. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras provide an identical match. Purusha acts as kinetic input, while Prakriti provides resistance. The shared structural topology becomes visible once cultural metaphors are removed. Each tradition relies on the same proportional relationship between initial force and containment. Subjected to this semantic constraint, these frameworks function as interchangeable blueprints for distributing pressure. We now apply the final constraint, wrapping this thermodynamic model in strict Presbyterian nomenclature. The unyielding kinetic pressure wave translates to the Presbyterian concepts of the decree or providence. The unavoidable path is predestination. System stabilization is irresistible grace. A structural break is total depravity. Calvinist vocabulary is rooted in strict monergism, providing an accurate lexical skin for a deterministic system. In a system governed by a sovereign pressure variable, the variable of free will remains zero and is discarded from the model. Presbyterian terminology acts as the ideal filter for articulating a high-pressure deterministic universe. We now narrate the journey of the mind, body, and soul as an algorithmic progression. The mind, body, and soul operate as distinct fluid reservoirs. The mind acts as the kinetic interface, processing the incoming pressure of providence. The body provides the physical resistance to contain that pressure. The soul is the stabilized output, achieved when mind and body reach thermodynamic equilibrium. The fall of man describes a system failure where kinetic pressure exceeded the body's structural capacity. The biblical narrative operates as a deterministic algorithm, calculating the state of human consciousness. This entire system can be integrated into a single conceptual equation. The input variable is the sum force of divine pressure. This force is mediated through the kinetic interface of the mind, multiplying against the structural resistance of the body. The interaction of those variables calculates the resulting state of the soul. This equation integrates each structural requirement of the model into a single logical progression. The final state of the soul is a pre-calculated output determined entirely by the initial divine pressure. This same logic calculates the final outputs of the Dogon, Hermetic, and Yogic models without altering the underlying math. Viewing these ancient, fluid mythological texts as precise, deterministic physics blueprints requires a fundamental reevaluation of their utility. By forcing diverse cosmologies through a rigid linguistic and physical bottleneck, we isolate the universal structural mechanics of consciousness.